Okay, here the Rastafarian Protocol want to present a prophetic time code called the 2300-year prophetic time code, which is the prophetic time code to present the exact birth year of His Imperial Majesty. Okay, first we'd like to show you that this is a prophetic time code that exists and you can look it up. It's something that you will find on YouTube, and this is the prophetic time code that we Rastafarians need to identify the birth year of His Imperial Majesty in scriptures. So as we scroll down, you can see that there is question: what was the 23-day prophetic prophecy in the Bible? What was the end of the 2300-year prophecy? And what does the 2300-day mirror chart mean? So this is just a presentation we would like to show you, of which we are not making this presentation up. We're not trying to devise a study or a new curriculum trying to depict His Imperial Majesty's birth in scriptures. So let's continue on. We also want to show that there's many videos on YouTube in regards to this particular prophetic time code, the 2300-year prophetic time code. So we will see that this is something you can look up on Google. But what is important with this prophetic time code, it is the one that predicts the exact year that His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie, was supposed to be, anticipated to be, and expected to be coming at the year of which this prophetic time code ends. Once again, this is the prophetic time code of which we will discover that His Imperial Majesty was born on this birthday. And we're going to do this so quick, you're going to be amazed that it is a prophecy in the scriptures in regards to the birth of His Imperial Majesty. You see, we can continue going on, and the 2300-year prophetic time code is something that is important within the Christian curriculum in regards to the coming of Christ. Let's go further. When you go to the image department of this particular prophetic time code, same thing, 2300-year prophetic time code as you see above. There's many charts giving the calculation of the European Western Christianity's calculation of this prophetic time code. You see it here. Let's continue. Okay, let's look at this chart here. This is the European Western's interpretation of the 2300-year prophetic time code. You see 457 BC. That was a decree that went out to build the temple, of which this temple was based on a prophecy in regards to the abomination of desolation found in Daniel. Now, you see 457 BC, and then you see 408 BC. Jerusalem was completed in 408 BC. Jerusalem finished. That was the first 49 years of the prophetic time code, which is called the 70 weeks prophecy. It gives a description of the decree going out, of which Cyrus spoke of a decree in 457 BC to rebuild the temple. And this is found in Numbers and Ezra. And it took 49 years to build the temple. Now, what's important with this prophetic time code is these two dates here. If you look at these codes, now you see the 70 weeks, the 490 years prophetic time code. It is a different prophetic time code from the 2300-year prophetic time code. The 2300-year prophetic time code is dealing with the sanctuary and the cleansing of the temple, which is going to take 2300 years from when the temple is built. Now, what the Christians did, they started the 2300 years at 457 BC when the decree went out to rebuild the temple. It took 49 years for the temple to be completed. So in 408 BC, the temple was completed, it was finished, and the doors opened. That's when the abomination of desolation began. When the doors opened, when it was in operation, because it was to last 2,300 years before a cleansing. Now, what they did was interpret the prophetic time code as starting at 457 BC. You count 2,300 years from 457 BC when the decree went out, you come up with 1844, the Great Disappointment. This is when the Great Disappointment of Europe and the American pilgrims and British colonists came to America, and America's won their independence. And in 1844, the Millerites began calculating the 2,300-year prophetic time code, of which they started in 457 BC. You were supposed to count 2,300 years, not from when the decree went out, but when the temple was actually built in 408 BC. That was 49 years from the decree going out. That is a part of the 70 weeks prophecy, where the prophecy of the 70 weeks give the prediction of the coming of a Messiah that was to be brought forth and go through a crucifixion. And that's a calculation, prophetic time code of 490 years, predicting the coming of a Messiah that is to be slain, a Messiah that is to suffer, a Messiah that is to be brought to his death. And then the 2,300-year prophetic time code is the prophecy that predicts the coming of another Messiah, a second Messiah. And some Christians may say it's the second coming of Christ. The Rastafarians may say, yes, it's the coming of His Imperial Majesty, but it is the coming of the Messiah who is to come forth and bring the redemption upon the earth 2,300 years after 408 BC, when the actual temple is completed. Now, you can see here that they have all type of charts showing the prophetic time code, and the decree to rebuild Jerusalem is the start of this prophetic time code. So you see that. It's clear. We have to understand what goes on, and what was the results of their calculation was 1844 AD. If you look up 1844, it's clear that the Great Disappointment refers to the grief experienced by 100,000 Millerites who expected Jesus to return on October 22nd, 1844. This date was the end of the longest time prophecy in the Bible, found in Daniel 7 and 8. The prophecy begins in 457 BC and continued 2,300 years later until 1844. And you can even say, it says, who was involved in the Great Disappointment of 1844? Ultimately, a variety of groups arose from the ashes of the Millerites camp, including the Jehovah Witnesses, the Seventh-day Adventists. Actually, the October 1844 debatical was the second Great Disappointment for followers of Miller's chronology and prophecy blueprint. So the Great Disappointment was big in Western theology, Christian theology, and that was the expectation of Jesus to come forth flying out the sky. And this is where they had a great disappointment in the Christian arena, of which they calculated that 2,300 year period from 457 BC. So you see this. You see the prophecy: 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. That's 490 years that bring forth the cross period of Christ. That is a different prophecy from the 2,300 year. The 2,300 years wasn't supposed to be started in 457. The 70 weeks prophetic time codes was 400. Once again, see 490 years. That's the 70 weeks prophetic time code that presented 490 years from 457 to AD 31. That's where you see the cross. That's bringing forth the first Messiah. That is an accurate calculation. If you study the 70-week prophecy, you will come up with the calculation of it being 490 years from 457 BC. Now, what they did, they calculated the 70 weeks from 457 BC. What Daniel shows is it doesn't show a calculate date to start the 2300 year prophetic time code, which the 2300 year prophetic time code, which every day represents a year. This is the coming of the King Messiah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So if you start at the timing when the temple was constructed, when it was finished, which is noted in this particular prophecy, the 70 weeks prophecy, what gives you the clue. The 70-week prophecy gives you the clue that you show the starting date at the period of which that period of the temple being completed comes to its final year, 408 BC. If you count 2300 years from 408 BC, when the temple was constructed, when it was completed, when the doors opened, and when it became an abomination to God because it didn't have the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was in Ethiopia. So this particular second temple was an abomination. And this is the same temple that when Yahshua came forth, he turned over the table, and in 70 AD it was destroyed. So it was the abomination of this temple that was constructed in 408 BC. You count 2300 years from 408 BC, which the Christians counted the 2300 years from 457 BC when the decree went out, when Cyrus made the decree to build the temple. Just his word went out, and then they went out 49 years later. The temple was completed, the doors opened. The Christians counted it the 2300 year prophecy in 457 because the 70 weeks prophecy started in 457. There's two prophetic time codes. So they assumed to start the 2300 day prophecy the same year they started the 70 weeks prophecy, which the 70 weeks prophecy, it is determined in the Bible when to start this prophecy, when the decree go out. The 2300 year prophetic time code is not prescribed when to start. So that is the mystery. But the clue was within the 70 weeks by making sure that it is presented in the 70 weeks, that first 49 year period. That first 49 year period is important because that is the two options that the Christians had to count the 2300 year prophetic time code to determine what year brings forth the Messiah. So they chose 457 and came up with 1844. 2300 years from 457 is 1844. That's the great disappointment. Instead of going to the next option, the second date is 408 BC, of when the temple was completed. All they had to do is count 2300 years from 408 BC, and you come up with 1892, the birth year of which the Messiah was to be on earth. What they did was calculate the 2300 year prophetic time code 49 years before it was supposed to be calculated. They were supposed to calculate it when the temple doors opened and the priest started giving the sacrificial offerings. This is when the abomination takes place. You can't start it in 457 BC because there's no oblations, there's no rituals, there's no sacrificing, so there's no abomination upon just the building of it. The abomination comes forth when they begin their sacrificing, which is not clean unto the Lord. So in 408 BC, if you start the 2300-year prophetic time code, you're not going to come up with a great disappointment. You're going to come up with the birth year of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Now, if you Rastafarians really want to know and know the birth year of His Imperial Majesty in scriptures, this is where you come to the Rastafarian protocol, because this is just little crumbs. But you do your calculations, do your investigations, do your studies, and see if this 2300-year prophetic time code, which is prescribed in the Bible, which has built major Christian faiths, the Jehovah Witness, the Seventh-day Adventist movements, that breaks off into all type of Christian theologies, that they use these prophetic time codes. And we can go further into other prophetic time codes just to let you know that this is very serious when you're looking at this is the answer to what we see as His Imperial Majesty coming forth. So we have to understand that you calculate. Instead of them calculating the 2300 years at 408 BC, they calculated at 457, the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, Ezra 7:27. We're just showing you the evidence. You see the 70 weeks of Daniel, they're giving you the overall, bringing forth the 30 in 34 AD, that brings forth Jesus. The 70 weeks is the prophecy calculating the time of Yahshua to come forth. The 2300-year prophetic time code is the one that prophesies the coming of His Imperial Majesty. They calculated in 457 BC, came up with 1844. That is the year they considered the start of judgment. Daniel 8:4. Now, if you calculate it correctly, even by using another chart, you see for 408 BC, that's the completion of the temple. And, it's quite clear. You can look at a lot of charts. It gives you their great disappointment year. But what's important is we of the Rastafarian protocol is identifying 408 BC as the completion of the temple. You were supposed, it wouldn't have been a great disappointment if they started the 2300-year prophetic time code at 408 BC. Things happened, and the prophecy ended up in 1892,